I'm going to show you guys how to make your pocket. If you can run into an old door panel like this here, and you need a new pocket, you're probably, first of all, you're probably not going to find the exact material. So be aware that these types of old materials are not available anymore. The colors are, you can't find them. So if you're thinking, hey man, oh yeah, I can find that, you're not. So you're gonna find something maybe as close as I have. This is like super close, this was the end of a run. They don't make this anymore. This is actually a Ferrari leather for this color, and pretty much I got the end of it. There's nobody that manufacturer's not making anymore because it's a fake leather type stuff, so it's not even the same texture as what's on there. But if you can see, I kind of had to fix here. There was a big crack and stuff, and I just kind of pieced in some stuff there to kind of make it not look too bad. But expect to have that kind of situation. You're not going to get exactly the same color. So you might want to find something that works with it, or whatever. And with mine, what I'm going to do is, if you look at the TMI, these are the TMI repops, and if you see here, well, it's kind of bowed out right now because I didn't put a clip on the bottom, that the line lines up with the pocket hole, which is different than the original. So the original is more like this. You see how it goes above the pocket hole. So I really don't know what color material it was behind there. You could use either one. So I'm going to use this material for the backing, and then I'm going to actually have my pocket go to right this line, and then I'll have, so the line will continue along. So you want to look at your pocket and figure that out. You could probably just make it all with the same material and it'd probably look okay. You might even have to use like black or something like that to accent it, because you don't have anything really close to the material, or use a different color or something like that that works out with it. But you'll need your material. You need to cut this piece that's going to be the pocket. This is the backer, okay? This is the pocket, and the pocket needs to be at least so that you're past here, okay, for enough room to staple it, and you're bigger than the hole's to here. You need to go at least 1 1/3 of the amount. So I mean, this is going to end up being right here. So when you put the elastic on there, you can slide it together and it makes it wrinkled up like the original was. So on curtains or something like that, it's 1 1/2 times, so that you have that wrinkle in it all the time. But this is about, I'd say about 1 1/3. So I'm going to go with, and we'll see how it turns out. If it comes out different, then you can adjust if you want yours to look different than mine. So you'll see how it goes in a second. I'm going to use this elastic here, which is a 1-inch elastic, and probably the trickiest part is actually feeding this through the groove. So the object of the game is to fold this over to the desired weight, and then run a stitch right here, and then another stitch down here with a 1-inch opening so that you can put this through. And then you'll be put this down and pull it tight so that there's a little bit of tension on it. Okay, and then you wrinkle up everything and push it into the hole. I'll show you step by step here as we go. So quickly, if you're sewing vinyl, you can possibly use a regular household machine, but you won't be able to run the Sunbrella thread that I'm using through that. So it's always best to have a commercial machine, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about commercial machines, the type of machine. If you're looking at one to buy, maybe use one on Craigslist or something like that. The kind of machine that you want is a minimum of what they call a dragging foot. The guys in the industry call that a dragging foot, and that's what this machine is. Okay, if you see here, it has a lever action that makes the bottom foot walk when you're sewing. So see how that moves? The foot moves too. So most sewing machines, just the teeth move, but this sewing machine, this part moves too. And this is a dragging foot machine. Now, the ideal machine for upholstery is called a walking foot machine. And the walking foot means that this whole, all this mechanism right here walks. The whole mechanism walks. It lifts up higher than the dragging foot one does, and the foot and all the mechanism up above it all walks together. The whole thing walks. So if you look at some videos, a lot of guys are selling a dragging foot machine online, and especially like Sailrite and stuff like those guys, and it's not bad, you know, it works, but just know what you're buying, because you might be paying, you know, thinking you're getting a walking foot machine, but you're really getting a dragging foot machine, and it's not going to work quite as good, especially when you're sewing foam. So if you're just sewing stuff like vinyl, the dragging foot, and you're doing welt, but you need a welt foot for that. A welt, hang on a second. Like if you're sewing this stuff, this is actually called welt. You'll see people call it piping, okay, but it's actually called welt. And if you're sewing welt, you need a foot, or a, what is this thing called? That actually has a groove in it. If you look down here in the bottom, I can't really, there it is. You can see that little arched area. That's a foot, so that when I'm feeding, this little thing here rides in that groove. So these are kind of the sewing basics. So if you're sewing welt, you need a welt, what's that thing called? I guess it's a foot. So those are pretty much the sewing machine basics. If you're new to the channel, I have another video on just that, that you need. So, you know, a walking foot machines are usually over $1,000. A dragging foot machines are a lot cheaper, and they have a commercial machine online that that's a desktop. Sailrite sells them, so you can look at their videos, and you'll see the guy has a machine like this, but it's like on a desktop, where having it on a table is a lot easier, because you're working with larger things when you're doing upholstery. They're showing a lot of videos on doing like a pillow or a stadium pillow or something like that, which you can use a desktop machine for those things pretty easily. But when you start doing, you know, seat covers and the rear seat cover, you know, for a Volkswagen, where it's a, you know, a whole bench seat, you know, shoving that through a narrow area from here to here is a lot tougher to do, because those machines are only about to right here, and you're folding it up and trying to shove it all through. You get to those points. You always try and make sure you're sewing the direction, so that it feels weird, because you're trying to sew with your product out here, and sometimes when you're right-handed, it feels kind of strange to do that. So you have to get used to that. I'm not a sewing expert. I'm a as-needed kind of person. I just do some of my own stuff, because, like, for instance, I went to the upholstery shop and I go, well, how much to sew up these seats? You know, I used to get them done for like years, you know, $150. I figured maybe $300 or something. Somebody could sew them up in a day. If I had them all padded, all you have to do is just stitch them up and shove them on the seat and pull it tight, you know, whatever. Well, everybody wanted, you know, $1,200 to sew up, and I was like, ooh. So I was like, I guess I'm gonna get a sewing machine and do some of my own stuff again, which I've done before, but you know, I'm not the best guy at sewing. So Some of the stuff I'm not that great at it. Some guys are a lot better at it. So, but I'm just giving you the guys the basics so that if you're going to try it, that you can learn, and you can buy a machine and practice and get good at it. And you know, you might be able to get one of those desktop ones that might work out, because I almost would have bought one of those, because this thing's a lot to store. You know, that's the downside to having a whole machine. You know, is storing this thing is kind of a pain. This is an old fella. This thing's really old, but honestly, if you keep it oiled, and you know, you're never going to wear one of these things out. They just don't wear out. So getting an old one's actually maybe better than a new one, you know, because the old ones just are super sturdy. So one of the things that's really helpful that I don't have, but just this little small stitch, I'm not going to worry about it. I'll just probably just put a little one of these here to hold it in place, or a few of these. What you do is you get this double-sided tape, and I was going to grab some at the upholstery supply and I forgot. So you put this on, you put the double-sided tape down, and then what that does is holds it in place via, you know, versus using, like if you're sewing in a house or something, you use pins. Yeah, the pins don't work too great with this type of fabric, but you just go ahead and fold this over and then pin it in place, or what I do is I'm just going to use those clips just to hold it right. And then since I've got such a lazy stitch to do, it's not hard, and go ahead and just I'm going to run a stitch about right here, okay, all the way along, and then I'm going to run another one down right near the end so that I have a nice 1-inch area. Mine, I'm going to use 1 inch. You can use 1/2 inch or whatever stuff, because I'm not sure what was on there originally, but I'm going to use this because I just know that those elastics don't last. So you can use a smaller one, you can use a cord, you know, whatever you want to use. So if you have an old one that's still, the pocket's no good, and it's sagging or whatever, you can actually just take a new piece of elastic, you know, take a coat hanger or a piece of metal rod and run it through the stitch area, and just pull a new piece through and then staple it. So you'll see that part of it later. So finally, after a bit of going back and forth, I got this thing sewn up. Again, I'm using Sunbrella thread. That's why it's kind of nice, some of those machines. The thing I don't like that much about this machine, and there's a way to fix it, is it's just too fast. So that's better for, you know, somebody who's better at it than me, I guess. But I like a really slow machine that I can just barely move it along, just chunk, 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 and then you can get it straighter. But what I do is I take a wire, I'm going to shove it through here, and then I'm going to pull the elastic band here back through. So what I've done through here is I've just stabbed through it, and I'm using this stainless steel Harbor Freight Tools wire. It's pretty cheap to buy. It might be something you want to have laying around. So then I just unhook my wire out of the other side. I'm using a T50 stapler. I have like 4 of these things, and this is the oldest one I have. I can't find the other ones right now. But T50 stapler, I'm going to try 1/4 inch. I think it really should be a little bit shorter than that, but I have just some 1/4 inch laying around. So I'm going to give it a shot, and let's see how it works. You know, I'm going to worry about it. You don't want it to poke through the other side, because remember, this is about 1/8 of an inch thick, and you've got the material here that you're going through. And so 1/4 inch is a little bit too long, but let's. All right, so the 1/4 inch R2 a little bit too long right here. I think they have a smaller one. Is it 1/8 inch maybe. Those will probably work all right. These barely poke through. I mean, so on the where you're only going through one layer, you're going to want the smaller staples like 1/8 inch. But when you're going through these, let me see. Yeah, when you're going through double or triple layer like that, you're going to need some of the 1/4 inch. So you're going to need to finesse it along and use some 1/4 inch and some 1/8 inch staples. So, I mean, theoretically you could do this part first, this part, you know, and then you could just leave this part off and just staple, you know, I put like 3 little things. Let's take a look at the other side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that other cloth. So you see how this kind of lines up with that line? I had to go above it just a little bit to make it work. But then that makes the pocket. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this color material as a backer. So, but when I put that on, then you're going to want the thicker, you know, the bigger staples. So then you take your other piece of vinyl, and you could actually glue the top edge if you wanted to and not staple that. That's probably what I'm going to do because I only have 1/4 inch staples laying around. I don't feel like going to the store right now. So then you go ahead and staple through both layers of this and the other. Kind of keep it tight. So you're going to have to pull this one a little bit tight. So I'm going to do like this edge first. Okay. Then I'm going to pull it tight across here so that there's no wrinkles in it, and then staple the bottom edge. And I'll actually staple a little bit over here, and then I'll staple the bottom edge. So I stapled all along here like so, and then what I'm going to do, I'll flip it over in a minute. So it looks like this. You don't really see the staples aren't totally penetrating all the way through. They're just barely. If you push on the stapler too hard, then they'll poke through. So, I mean, you could theoretically use the 1/4 inch staples, but use them at your own risk. Takes a bit of finessing. So you can see how I made the pocket this color. But I'm going to go ahead and glue the top edge, and I'll show you that. So again, the glue I use, do not use the 3M stuff. Do not get something from Home Depot. You got to get stuff from Upholstery Supply. This is a Sprayway. You can use this one. It seems to work pretty good. You can get this in a gallon or quart from the Upholstery Supply. This particular one right here, or this one right here, Weldwood High Strength, comes in a spray can. I don't think they have this one at Home Depot either. All those things I get from the Upholstery Supply. So I'll put 2 layers of glue, one on each part of it. So I put it on this end, and I'll also put it over here. Not just on one surface, on both surfaces. Sometimes what I'll do, and right now, is I'll just push it over and just kind of, while it's still wet, and get everything gelling up, you know, kind of glue on both surfaces really good. Because if you notice, I kind of puddled it on there. Peel it back, and then let it dry a bit to where it's pretty, you know, not fully dry. Like if you come back in an hour, it's probably not going to work. You could probably get it to work if you use a heat gun. You know, you wait a few minutes depending on the weather, where you're at, and then let that dry a little bit, and then just put it back down, and we'll take a look at it. Alright, so I took my Sprayway glass cleaner. I always keep this stuff around too. It's really good. And it works for a lot of things, so for restoration. So went ahead and cleaned this up. Take a look at it. I mean, yeah, if you didn't know I just did this, you might think that was an original pocket sitting there. But, you know, this door panel was pretty beat up, but you know, I'm fortunate to have all the original door panels for this car, which most of the time you don't. And I was really fortunate to get anything even close, remotely close to this color, because most of the old dirty greens, they don't have them anymore in most of the upholstery supplies. They're using whatever colors in cars today. So that's how that looks. Let's take a look at the back side. And it looks like that on the back side. It's not fancy. I just glued this so it's still wet. Check my glue again. I glued the edge here where it was sticking up. And put that in the car, and it's got a nice patina look. You can do the same thing real quick. You guys who have an old pocket that's still there, you can basically feed some of that through this area here. You can actually remove the stitches where they originally had the elastic in there, and then slide a new piece of elastic in, and then re-stitch it up. You can do that by hand, just using a needle and thread, and then use the stapling method that I showed you to hook them on so that they stay on longer than the glue that they put on there. Or you can just glue it if you don't want to, if you want it to be original. Then if you notice here, there's none of the staples really poking through. They're there. I mean, I can feel them if I put my finger on it. But it's not too bad. So if you wanted to cheat a little bit, you could use the 1/4" staples, but just be careful and not push them all the way through. When you have to kind of put some weight on it when you staple it, so you just don't put too much on there, and usually it won't poke through. So, but it's up to you on that, if you wanted to save $1 or $2, or just hassle going to the store like I did. All right, so that's it for the pocket. I'll talk to you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.